If you are looking to step into film photography, especially if you're on the fence and don't want to borrow massive budget ton gear, I have a camera you absolutely need to see. In terms of pure value for money, this is 10 out of 10, no question.
Think about this. Adjusted for today's inflation, this camera originally cost around $2,400, but today, you can pick one up on eBay for just $30 to $50. To put that into perspective, you are paying a fraction of the cost for a camera that was once a professional-grade powerhouse. Today, it actually costs far less than a Nikon FM2, despite offering a much more advanced feature set. And make no mistake, this is not a cheap, fragile piece of junk. Quite the opposite. This camera is well known for its good durability and exceptional performance. Today, we are reviewing the Nikon F90. Let's start with the most important point and break down exactly why this is my top recommendation. The Nikon F90 packs a feature set that is absolute overkill for beginners. Why? Because this wasn't built for casual amateurs. It was a serious semi-pro machine, and many professionals of that era chose it as their daily driver. Sure, it might not have the legendary romantic backstory of the fully mechanical Nikon FM2, the camera Steve McCurry used to shoot the famous Afghan girl. But guess what? In the years that followed, McCurry himself used the N90S, the US version of the F90X, as one of his film cameras, just like many other master photojournalists of the time. If you want complete control, this beast gives you a maximum shutter speed of 1/8,000 of a second. That was mind-blowing back then, and honestly, it's still incredible today. You get full manual control over your shutter and aperture, plus advanced automatic program modes that are remarkably smart. It also gives you several vari-program modes, including a portrait program that automatically bias the exposure settings for the type of picture you're shooting. It even includes pro-level features like a dedicated depth of field preview button. In the 90s, having a DOF preview was the ultimate defining line between a cheap amateur toy and a serious professional tool. And here is the best part for budget-conscious shooters: backward compatibility. If you own vintage Nikon manual focus lenses, the F90 makes shooting them a breeze thanks to its electronic rangefinder. Inside the viewfinder, the camera will literally show you which way to turn the focus ring until the image is razor sharp. And if you prefer autofocus, Nikon's older AF lens lineup is massive, and today, these lenses are so cheap they feel almost free. Just a quick heads up. To get full autofocus functionality, you'll want to stick to standard AF and AFD lenses. The newer AFS lenses with built-in motors will only work in manual focus on this body. The next major selling point is sheer reliability. While the F90 might not have the legendary bulletproof reputation of the mechanical Nikon F2, it honestly has a reputation for good durability and very few major mechanical problems. Think about it. There are plenty of vintage cameras out there with incredible features, but their reliability is deeply questioned. Take the Minolta X700, for example, a beautiful camera, but plagued by notorious capacitor failures that everyone talks about. As someone who lived through that 90S era, I can confidently tell you that the F90 was built to endure. The main inner chassis and the bottom tripod plate are made of solid, rugged metal. The viewfinder prism is high-quality glass. It stays crystal clear, and you almost never hear of any prism degradation issues. Even after over 30 years, this camera holds up beautifully. It only has two minor quirks you should watch out for when buying one today. First, the infamous sticky film back. The rubberized coating degrades into a gooey mess over time. The good news? You can easily wipe it clean with some rubbing alcohol, exposing the bare plastic underneath. Second, on some well-used units, the internal LCD display inside the viewfinder might show signs of bleeding or fading. When you're buying one, just peek through the viewfinder. If the shutter speed and aperture numbers look sharp and vivid, you are completely good to go. Before we dive into the field test, where I paired this f90 with a 28-85mm zoom lens and loaded it with some classic Kentmere Pan 100 black and white film, we have to talk about another massive triumph of this camera: its visual design and ergonomics. The f90 was built to succeed the older f801, and I still remember the first time I saw it. The most immediate upgrade was how incredibly beautiful and well proportioned it looked. Nikon completely transformed the design language. They took the blocky, boxy, square-shaped body of the f801 and redesigned it with rich, organic curves. In fact, if you look closely, the f90 actually has more beautiful curves and contours than the legendary f100 that replaced it years later. But that gorgeous shape came with a fascinating engineering trade-off. You see, back in the f801, Nikon did something way ahead of its time. The entire outer frame was solid metal, which they coated with a smooth polymer. It was so advanced that even today, most people look at an f801 and mistakenly think it's just a cheap plastic camera. When it came to the f90, Nikon wanted those complex, modern curves, but shaping them in coated metal was too difficult and costly. So, they made a choice. They swapped the metal top plate for a specially formulated polycarbonate plastic. This plastic allowed Nikon to sculpt those beautiful, flowing lines, but it came at the cost of that absolute heavy metal rigid feel. Interestingly, Nikon realized this trade-off. When they designed the successor, the f100, they decided to bring back the magnesium alloy metal body for maximum durability. But because they went back to metal, those beautiful, deep curves of the f90 had to be sacrificed, making the f90 a truly unique, beautifully sculpted anomaly in Nikon's history. Now, to make this review complete, we must talk about the layout and ergonomics. The button placement on the f90 is a masterclass in design. In fact, it is so well thought out that it basically set the blueprint for modern Nikon DSLRs and mirrorless cameras used today. 30 years later, the layout remains virtually unchanged. You have the classic mode buttons on the top left that you press in tandem with the main command dial on the right. There's an AE lock button perfectly placed right under your right thumb, and the depth of field preview and focus lock buttons sit right where your fingers naturally rest. I'm going to skip the boring, step-by-step tutorial on how to menu dive here. There are a million videos on that, or you can just ask an AI. Instead, let's talk about the cold, hard facts you actually need to know before buying one. First up, multiple exposures. Out of the box, the f90 cannot shoot multiple exposures. If you want that feature, you are forced to buy and install the specialized MF26 data back. Personally, I think this was a massive marketing misstep by Nikon. Its predecessor, the f801, had a dedicated multiple exposure button built right onto the body. Nikon likely stripped this feature away just to force photographers into buying the expensive MF26 accessory. So, if you are a multi-exposure artist, make sure the eBay listing you're looking at already has the MF26 back installed. On the bright side, Nikon did give us a built-in viewfinder eyepiece shutter, a premium pro feature that the f801 lacked. This is a lifesaver for long exposures, especially if you're shooting astrophotography or star trails, as it blocks stray light from leaking through the back of the viewfinder and ruining your film. Lastly, let's talk autofocus speed. As I mentioned earlier, it is significantly faster and more accurate than the top-tier Nikon F4. It is more than enough for daily street photography or action. However, to be completely fair, it still wasn't as blazing fast as its chief rival, the Canon EOS system of that era. And let's be honest, it is noticeably louder. It's got that raw, mechanical screech that lets everyone around you know you just took a photo. One last thing before we take the f90 out to shoot, I want to give you a quick reality check on how this semi-pro body actually differs from Nikon's true top-tier flagship cameras. Those legendary pro models are heavily sought after by collectors today, meaning you'll have to pay at least 3 to 4 times more to get your hands on them. So, what did Nikon strip away from the F90 to keep the price down? First, the viewfinder coverage is 92%, not 100%. Nikon's biggest flex with their pro cameras has always been a 100% frame coverage, which allows you to see exactly what will end up on the film. Plus, on true pro bodies, you can completely remove the pentaprism to shoot from a waist level perspective. On the F90, that head is permanently fixed. Second, Nikon removed the mirror lockup feature. If you're a landscape photographer using massive telephoto lenses or doing high magnification macro work at slow shutter speeds, mirror slap vibration can ruin your sharpness. For those specific scenarios, missing mirror lockup is a bummer. But let's be honest, for 95% of everyday shooting, you will never miss these features. Now that we know exactly what this camera is and what it isn't, let's load up that Can't Pan 100, mount the 28-85mm zoom, and hit the streets to see what this $40 space certified beast can actually do. Alright, let's load up and hit the streets. Loading film into the F90 is a breeze. Just pull the leader to the red mark, close the back, and the camera automatically advances to the first frame. No fiddling with manual spools. For action shooters, this thing features a continuous shooting mode of 3.6 frames per second. Now, I'm not going to burn through a roll of film just to show you that film is expensive, and honestly, I'm more of a relaxed, casual shooter anyway. Another great bonus is the 10-pin remote shutter port. I happen to have a compatible 10-pin remote, which makes shooting self-portraits incredibly easy without running back and forth. The only minor disappointment, you can't combine the self-timer with the remote. When you press the remote button, it fires instantly. For this test, I also brought the F90 into the studio paired with the classic 28-85mm lens. The autofocus felt snappy and didn't hunt annoyingly in studio lighting. Plus, the wider autofocus detection area makes framing so much easier, especially in a studio environment. In fact, using this in a studio setup is actually more convenient than Nikon's flagship F3, simply because the F90 comes with a built-in hot shoe right out of the box. As for the lens, most Nikon lenses from this era are very sharp and more than good enough for practical use. Overall, Nikon's lens standards in this period were very high, even compared with other Japanese competitors of the same era. And looking at the results on Can't Pan 100, the images are more than solid, no complaints here. Plus, the illuminated LCDs inside the viewfinder and on the top plate were a lifesaver in the dim studio environment. So, what is my final verdict? If we are talking purely about value for money, this camera is an absolute 10 out of 10, hands down. You cannot get this level of pro features for $40 anywhere else. But for my official, well-rounded score, I have to give the Nikon F90 a 7 out of 10. Here is why. From a long-term collector's standpoint, highly electronic 90S cameras aren't the best investments. When the electronics eventually die, they become paperweights. Therefore, this isn't a camera meant to sit beautifully on a shelf. This is a camera built for people who actually want a rugged, reliable tool to go out and shoot film today.